I think okay. So we are live. I think we can edit this once it goes on YouTube.
We shall see.
Anyway, so Don, we just had 2 amazing interviews with Bills legend and wide receiver Don Beebe, and then ESPN Radio's Christine Lisi, who was born in Olean and was a huge Bills. And I got a little bit of Sabres talk in there, which
you did.
I know is not necessarily your wheelhouse, but
no, I'm getting back on the bandwagon a bit. But nice work, by the way, getting Christine through your Twitter correspondence.
Yeah, she was
excellent.
She was great, and so we figured we'd do the live version of our show, or the kind of the you and I version of the show, not with the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Figured we might do it live from a basement because what could possibly happen on a podcast?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong in a basement of a podcast in Buffalo over the last 24 hours?
Yeah, you feel like there's equal opportunity for people to do podcasts, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I wasn't trying to get you.
No, absolutely.
I know you wouldn't.
Absolutely not.
With that.
So, usually we talk about, stories from the 90s. I think maybe we could start with talking about the 1990 Bills and, where they were after 13 weeks going into week 14. We did touch on this with our interview with Don Beebe that's going to air tomorrow. They had kind of a get right game and an easy game against the Colts in 1990. Yeah. I don't know if you have much to say about that game specifically.
Yeah, well, I think Don Beebe, first of all, said that that's the game he broke his leg in.
No, that was the Miami game.
The Miami game coming up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about the Colts game. Okay, we can skip the Colts game. The Colts game, they won 31-7.
Colts game, though, it's noteworthy if you look in this book of records and notes that Eric Dickerson said something to the effect of, I laughed during the week when some of the guys around here thought we could match up with the Bills. They could run up the score.
He basically thanked the Bills for calling off the dogs.
Yeah. For a Hall of Famer to acknowledge that.
And that was in Indianapolis, that game.
Yeah.
So they won 31-7. Leading up to, ironically enough, their Week 14 game was the famous Giants-Bills game, and then the Bills-Dolphins December snow game.
Right. And if you thought we had bad weather for the game this past week, the weather at the Meadowlands that day was like 35 and a driving rain. I was not there. I was in the ticket office. We were getting ready for the playoffs. We had billed or invoiced. It was only my second year there. I was in the ticket office and we were invoicing and for playoff tickets.
Yeah.
Watching the game in the office and Jim got hurt. We panicked, but Frank Reich came in, kept the steering wheel, the ship going in the right direction. No mistakes, but he was going to start the next week in Miami, which Don Beebe agreed that was probably the biggest game in the team's history, regular season game up until that point.
Yeah. And ironically enough, with the game coming up Saturday.
Yeah.
So I know, one of the big news stories of this morning is Cole Beasley signing. And we've kind of talked about this before, but I had a couple questions for you regarding, the logistics of him. Obviously he's here, he worked out this morning, going to sign to the practice squad. So there are 4 regular season games left. So I don't know if people really understand how you get paid in the NFL. You think you sign for the year, but you get paid 18, or is it 17 checks? Do you get paid on the bye?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 18 now.
Okay.
It's an 18 weeks.
So
season,
Cole would sign a contract for presumably around the veteran minimum.
Yeah, I want to say it could be $850,000, but you get 1/18 of that every week.
So he would get those 4 regular season game checks. Now he'd have to be elevated from the practice squad, obviously, but I think that's the expectation. So probably not incentive laden contract, probably a pretty basic general street free agent contract.
Yeah, I doubt it. I think the team, if there's a minimum salary benefit contract, which basically means the team gets a break, like $250,000 off of the cap. But again, it's only 1/18 of that, so it's marginal. But I think he sees the opportunity to, for the competitor that he is, to, join a team that he knows can make a run at it. He's done it before. Monetarily, financially, there are you do get rewarded for as the further you advance in the playoffs. Right. You get the shares, but that's not nothing. But it's probably not his motivation.
Right? No. All in, even if they win the Super Bowl, it's probably less than $1 million for him total in compensation to play 7 or 8 games at this point. Correct?
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah. So we got a couple comments already. If Beasley's leg is healthy, he can come in and easily get his job back. He was a third down wizard. He obviously fits a role. Everything I've seen this morning is that maybe Josh Allen himself lobbied to bring Cole back, which I could see after what happened last week and some of the drops.
It's funny you bring that up because we've had two guests on. We had Steve Tasker and we had Don Beebe, which we haven't released. I know we keep talking about it because people are going to love it. But he said that the team, Don's rookie year, he didn't play the first two games, and Jim knew what he could do in practice, and he was like, "We got to get this guy in the field." So they cut Chris Burkett because of what Jim said.
And Chris Burkett was an established number 2 receiver at the time,
and he was furious. And Von Beebe came in, shares a hilarious story about his first play in that game, and we'll leave that. But Tasker also said that Jim knew that no one could cover him in practice, and he lobbied for him to get on the field. And Steve likewise did a lot of damage. So when you say that Josh Allen, I don't know this, but speculating that he might have made a play for Cole Beasley, we've seen historical evidence, quite a parallel of exactly that playing out.
Yeah, it was funny. Steve said that not only did he push to get him playing time, Steve Tasker, but then he'd also force him the ball during the games as kind of a, hey, I told you this dude's good.
He wanted to be right, Steve said.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the idea of having a franchise quarterback, because a lot of times in the league, the players are never going to be able to dictate, roster moves, et cetera. But once you reach the status, the fact that it's even, a thought or feasible that he might have gone in and lobbied for Cole to come back shows you the power that he probably has in the organization. He basically handpicked the offensive coordinator after Dable left.
Yeah. And watching Beasley, I didn't know him. I left before he got there, but just watching him over the past few years reminded me of a player for the Jets that I hated.
Wayne Corbett.
Wayne Corbett was able to get those key, third down conversions.
When I was there, when I was there and we played them in the Meadowlands, he was smaller than me. Wayne Corbett, shorter than me. He was a small man, and obviously that stood out even more, during an NFL game. But he was the quickest person I saw laterally, like being on the sideline of any opponent that we had. It was unbelievable just how twitchy and how quickly he could get cut in and out of breaks, even during warmups. Because you would watch guys on the other team during warmups. That's because I didn't have anything to do during warmups, so I would enjoy watching basically the freak athletes on the other team.
Yeah.
And Wayne Corbett came out, and clearly physically he was not a freak. So I was just watching him do, some of the warm-up drills, and it was unbelievable how twitchy and how quick he was. And you could see the way he was able to just maneuver his feet, that he was basically unguardable in the slot, which is exactly like Cole.
What's funny you say that, and I just remember how many situations there were that he would convert, and but it was like, is it just me noticing this? But then Vic, we had on Carucci, said he wrote a book with him, he was that good.
Yeah, he was, and that's kind of a perfect comparison for Cole.
Yeah.
So we had a question here from Amicus. Do you think that it's at least $100,000 per player for a Super Bowl win?
I don't.
Oh, you know what? He actually just commented with the answer. Yet. It's $75,000 per player for the losing team and $150,000 per player for the winning team.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
I was voted a half playoff share when I was there.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we didn't make playoffs, but I did get 2 Super Bowl tickets, which was great. And that was that. Is that your cat? Yeah, that is your cat.
How did a cat get into our corporate office downtown?
So again, the dangers of doing a podcast in a basement in Buffalo in December of 2022.
Live,
yes. So I got 2 Super Bowl tickets as kind of like a bonus, and it was quite the system back then, where you basically I never physically touched the tickets.
You had to sign something saying you wouldn't sell them, didn't you?
No, I did sell.
You did sell.
I did sell.
Okay.
No. Yeah. So remember what happened?
Remember
what happened with Mike Tice, the old Vikings coach?
Oh,
he got in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was going on throughout the league, and I was given 2 Super Bowl tickets. I never physically touched the tickets, and then magically one day I walked down into the training room, and on one of the training tables was an envelope with my name on it, and it was the compensation for the Super Bowl tickets. And let me tell you, this was the Ravens and Tampa Bay. Okay. And I had never been to a Super Bowl. I've never been to a Super Bowl. I was more than glad to take the envelope rather than go to the game, because I got compensated fairly well for those two seats.
I'm sure you did, and we all as a staff got playoff bonuses the further you went into,
and a chocolate football.
And a chocolate, that was for Christmas.
Okay,
Mr. Wilson.
Well, when you were there, the Christmas bonus was the playoff bonus most of the years, right?
The early years I was there.
Yeah,
you get a playoff bonus, and we like counted on that.
Sure.
So when we didn't get it, like Christine brought up 1997. It's like, what is going on? 94, 97. Like, it's kind of like Wayne or Griswold, Clark Griswold. Like, I was going to put a swimming pool in, and instead I got 2 tickets to the House of Pancakes or whatever.
Is it true?
Like, it was shocking not to get that money.
I heard a rumor. I don't know if somebody told me this story. It might have been you. Were they going to take everyone?
What's the call here, Josh?
To the cat?
Yeah,
Where is he?
I don't see it.
I don't know what we do. Is it true that Mr. Wilson was going to fly everyone to Hawaii for the Pro Bowl or the Super Bowl? What was the whole thing?
If we won the Super Bowl,
okay.
He was going to take everyone to Hawaii to present them their rings.
That's what it was. Now, was that kind of an open offer over those 4 years? Like, it would have been you and Amy.
It was you and a guest. It was a rumor, but I heard it from, put it this way, we had a Detroit office there.
Yeah.
Frank Winicki, Jeff Lippman. I talked to Frank almost every day. And I think he said, just so you know, if we win the Super Bowl, that's where he would know, because he was going to have to budget for it.
The staff was much smaller then, too.
True.
I mean, relevant. 1/3 the size, right?
We were 1/3 the size, yeah.
Oh, man, what an epic time that. Could you imagine, like, Jim, Bruce, Thurman, Andre, Daryl in Hawaii? Oh my goodness! What a after finally winning the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, and we talked to Don Beebe about him winning the Super Bowl. What a story that is! But I also worked not with the Eagles, but they were a client of mine after I left the Bills, and our first one. And Paul Lancaster, the former player engagement director here, shared how they got their rings, and it was just, it gave you chills. It was so special the way it was a big presentation. They didn't take them to Hawaii, but it was extremely cool and something he'll never forget. He brought it to the house. And so, hey, the Bills, regardless of what anyone says, are very much still looking good for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just before we talk about the media room at One Bills Drive, just for anybody who has watched and noticed, I've worn this Bruce Smith jersey quite a few times now in a row. It is washed.
Thank you.
I put it on after the Minnesota game, and I vowed to not take it off for a podcast until they lose again. And I got burned with Old Takes Exposed after the Jets game, declaring that the last loss of 2022. But I'm going to keep the Bruce Smith jersey karma going until they lose. Now, if they rest the starters in Week 18 for some odd reason, if Kansas City loses or whatever,
you put that disclaimer in there.
Yes, I will. I will continue with the Bruce Smith. But until there is a legitimate loss, we'll keep seeing.
Which did happen in 1990, by the way. Not to get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
but the Bills rested starters
in Week 17. Washington.
The Redskins.
Do you remember who started that game for the Bills? Quarterback?
I think it was Gail Gilbert.
It was Gail Gilbert.
Yeah.
And he ended up going to 5 straight Super Bowls.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
He's the only player to ever, because he left the Bills after 93 and went to San Diego.
Yeah.
And then he lost 5 straight Super Bowls, which is right. He lost 5 straight. Yeah. So with a bunch of the news that came up today, and we're not into the whole gotcha thing or rumors and gossip, but we thought it might be fun to just kind of take you into the media room at One Bills Drive. Don had decades of experience there, and I was there for a number of years. And, I think maybe a couple stories or observations to share from, kind of how the media was back in the late 80s, early 90s, as opposed to kind of what it is now, and how a guy, how some of the media members maybe have evolved and how maybe some of the media members have not evolved.
Yeah, well, social media is certainly a huge factor now that wasn't prominent. It was just kind of in its early stages. During a lot of that, I had no reason to be in the media room, but we all had.
So can you maybe just talk to people where was the media room at One Bills Drive? So let's go back to like 1990. Okay.
Yeah. 1990.
So 1990, before the field house, before the administration building, it was pretty cramped. I mean, so there's the tunnel, there was the locker room. there were 3 floors of the administration building, and then where was the media? Every day.
Yep, there was. Well, it was Wednesday was the big day. Wednesday was official media day where accredited media guys could, media people would be invited in and to ask questions. There'd always be a press conference with Marv. They'd always be on a speaker phone interview with the head coach of the opposing team. So again, I had no reason to be in the room, but we in our offices we all had televisions, so we would usually watch and listen, hear what they say. But there was a couple of years where my office was on the 3rd floor. And they used, you remember this?
Yes.
You open up the elevators and they were right there.
Yes, in that little conference. So what people don't realize is that the media would basically like spend the day there.
Pretty much the whole day.
So it's not as if they would come in for an hour. It wasn't like a tour.
No.
It wasn't like a tour coming through and they do a couple interviews and leave. The media would be there. I guess a few of them would be there Monday, and nobody would be there Tuesday.
No,
it's players' day off, game plan day. No media Tuesday. Wednesday, like you said, is the big scrum. And I do remember them being right outside your office, and there'd be a speakerphone to like whoever they were playing, that coach, and a star player or two. Mm-hmm. But I think what people might not realize or might not know is that the media would be there all day, like kind of together. So there's probably back then there were maybe like 20 of them.
Yeah, and they would forget that we were there. I remember Bob Schatz had an office there too. Our door was open. We'd have to shut it when we go on speakerphone, but we were just kind of part of the scenery, and we would hear the conversations, and they were a bit off-putting. Not everyone, you can't paint them all the same stroke of the brush, but there was one particular press conference they had with Marv, and they kept asking him something strategic. Are you going to, I don't know who we're going to play, as a Jerry Rice or someone. Are you going to double Jerry Rice? Are you going to, they kept asking it, and he kept saying, well, I don't want to go down that path strategy wise. And they kept asking it in different ways, like 4 or 5 times. And he wasn't going to fall for it. He wasn't going to take the bait. So afterwards, it reminded me of a Saturday Night Live sketch where it was during the first Persian Gulf War, where I think it was like Phil Hartman was playing Dick Cheney, and there was a press room, and they were all asking him, like, where are our troops and what are they doing, basically. Yeah. And he kept artfully dodging the question, and it made me think of Marv doing that. So I asked Scott Birchtold, there was no YouTube at the time. I said, I know you know a lot of people at NBC. Any chance you could ask them if I can get a copy of that skit? And he asked, and they sent it.
Oh, wow.
In either a VCR tape or it might have been a DVD at that time. I think it was a VCR tape of just that skit.
Oh, how funny.
And so I gave it to Marv, and he told me he watched it. He laughed so hard. And in the off season, he invited all of the coaches over to his house, and he played it for
That's
them.
Amazing. That's so funny.
That's what I deal with, right?
It's such an odd dynamic in that room, because it's, these guys are supposed to, it's journalistic integrity, but you're feeding them lunch.
Yeah.
And
they took advantage of that, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, they ate, most of them were gross. I mean, honestly, just gross. Like, it was like a buffet, and it looked like, a bomb went off in that place by the end of the day. And they're sitting there, and, my memories was of laptops and, guys kind of sitting together and, punching out stories, whatever else. But they'd be there all day. And they kind of were like this. It was almost like this roving band.
Yeah. And they were, the guys that were acting that way are the ones that shouldn't have been. Like, the established guys were way more professional.
Yes.
And no names here.
And what was striking to me is whenever there was a big game and the national media came, they conducted themselves in just such a different way than the local guys. And I have a funny story. I remember, if anybody's older and remembers, Art Wander. The tiny tot of the Kilowatt, I remember from WGR, and he was a real short guy, older, and I remember it was always a joke that you'd never wanted to get stuck in the elevator with Art, because Art would never be quiet, like, never. He just would talk, and he also didn't smell great, frankly. He just didn't, and he smelled kind of old and musty. Not to disparage anybody, but he just smelled old and musty. And like they were cliquey, and it just, I didn't enjoy I didn't enjoy being there like Wednesday afternoon,
Yeah.
Thursday afternoon. There was always grumbling about having to leave practice once they started closing practice
Yeah.
down, and it was like 5 minutes to get them out of practice. Like
They knew the drill
it's
too.
the same routine
Right.
every day, and you knew, after a certain drill, they had to leave. You close practice. Well, it would inevitably hold us up between 5 and 10 minutes every single day because they would linger and the camera wouldn't turn off or whatever. And it was always the same guys. It was the same guys every single time holding up practice, just being like disrespectful to the fact that you're in another. You don't work for the Bills
No, and they essentially used that area as their office space all day long.
all day
They
long.
weren't, they weren't asked to leave.
Yeah, and then after the game, on a Sunday, it's the same kind of thing where there's that kind of like that toxic mix of national guys. There's a lot of emotion after a game, and then you've got frankly a guy like Jerry Sullivan who wants to make a point or stay relevant, and he's gonna say something to engender a response during a highly emotional time. If you want to ask a question, a legitimate question, great. If you want it to be confrontational, if it's a fair question, sure, that's your job. But it's the seeking of relevancy and trying to stay in the news and to prove that
He did that.
yeah, he sure did. But yeah, I just found that whole dynamic to be odd and off-putting, and I feel like it kind of sets up that adversarial dynamic that.
Yeah, and it's funny. My with Jerry Sullivan, I had very little interaction with him. Ironically, I saw him on the road more than I saw him at home because he went to all the road games. But my impression of him. Hey, Josh, he's right there.
Oh, there he is. There's a cat.
Yeah, was he really avoided eye contact? Like I for some reason I always think of MetLife Stadium. There was a bathroom that was way on the top floor, and it was way. You had a long hallway, and the bathroom was way down there. And there were times, like if you went during a break, sometimes they were the only one person was coming at you, and you were the only one. You were like literally the only two people in the hallway, and you just kind of were looking for a courtesy nod.
Nothing.
Nothing. It was like
Yeah.
turned down. And
Yeah.
It was. This won't be a popular opinion, but in a way, I kind of pitied it, from this perspective. It's clear, like this maybe is an overgeneralization, but he just didn't like people or something. You know what I'm saying?
And you might have been viewed as kind of like the enemy.
I was the establishment.
You were the establishment.
Sure.
You were Bill's brass.
Yeah.
And ironically, anybody who knows you knows that you worked there forever, but you're not the typical football guy.
Right.
You also were not necessarily, it wasn't rah every single day. You weren't the guy who you couldn't say hi to after a loss. If there was a tough game, you could come in Monday morning and you'd still
you got to eat it.
You got to eat, say hello, whatever else. And that dynamic would be there with people who didn't work for it. It was just such a weird work dynamic where you can imagine you're in a company and your company has a really bad day, and then in walks 20 people who don't work for your company, and they're going to write all about it, and they're going to have opinions about it.
The power of the pen. You're right. And I remember one time. Alan Wilson of the Buffalo News had passed away. He was the exact opposite. He was just so engaging and everything. And I said to Jerry real quick, I said, "Hey, just want you to know, I know you were friends with him. I'm sorry about his passing." And I got a quick, "Oh, thanks." Like, fine. I wasn't looking. I just wanted to kind of let him know from a human perspective.
Yeah, it doesn't. It didn't have to be adversarial with staff.
Right.
And with the coaches were one thing, the players are obviously another thing. But with guys like you and me, it didn't have to be adversarial. It could be friendly. I mean, John Murphy, Vic Carucci, all those like class, class act guys. It just you could tell.
Going back to what I said before, you could tell the professionals and then the ones that just had different agendas. Hey, there we go.
You want to take him upstairs real quick? I can answer a question here from Amicus if you want to take him.
You're gonna be all right.
Yeah. I can
flying solo.
I can.
I trust.
Thank you. Yeah. What could happen? So Amicus just wrote that if I was Josh, I would have asked him what a Super Bowl winning offense looks like. Yeah, that's a really fair question. I mean, I don't understand the press is there to ask questions of the players. It's kind of like when I'm doing an interview here. I'm new at doing this. I've been doing this for 2 months, but But I feel like when we have a guest like Don Beebe today, or Christine Lisi from ESPN, I want to ask the question, and then I want to get the heck out of the way. I try not to interrupt. I try not to talk over the guest. I try to let the guest tell their story. Hopefully, if people are listening or watching this, they want to hear the guest's answer, not my editorial on it, not a statement. I'm not going to give a statement to Don Beebe about the 1990 Bills. I'm going to ask Don Beebe his perspective and his understanding of what happened and what he saw. I was just saying that, a guy just said Josh Allen should have asked back, what a Super Bowl winning offense looks like. And I just made the point that, you and I are both new to interviewing people, but I feel like the number one rule is ask the question and then get the hell out of the way for the answer. Like,
Yeah.
we're not making statements to Don Beebe today about playing wide receiver in the NFL. I want to get his perspective. And even if we would have had a disagreement or whatever, I'm going to ask you a question, and that engenders an answer, not a reaction.
Yeah, they're there to hear the person being interviewed. He actually thanked you, like, very sincerely, for asking one particular question. That you could just tell you're giving them the forum.
Yes. Yeah.
The platform.
And Brian R. just, wouldn't responding to the comment. It wasn't a question. It would be legitimizing the statement. And frankly, nobody is there to hear the statement from the media guy. You're there. The guy with the microphone at the podium is the player or the coach. It's not it. The story should never be the media. Win, lose. The story should never, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's whatever, the story, whether it's our podcast. Like, I don't want to be the story. I want Don Beebe to be the story. I want Christine Lisi to be the story. When we had Daryl Talley on, I want Daryl Talley. I want Daryl Talley to be the story as long as it's good. God love you, Daryl.
She was awesome.
But yeah, so like our whole thing here is, telling stories and getting reactions from players and staff. And I feel like when you walk in there with some negative statement to just engender a response, that's what I find difficult to stomach.
You said that at the opening of this hour. You're exactly right. He was, in a way, there's no way to spin it if he was fired. That wasn't his goal.
Yeah,
he did get the headlines.
Nationally,
Christine Lisi.
Yeah, Christine Lisi.
Who again? He got himself in trouble, and she did not.
Yeah, she knew it. She knew it this morning.
She knew it.
Yeah, we asked her about the role of women in the media and how far it's grown over the last 25 years, and I brought up in context of just saying, something happened this morning in Buffalo, and she knew about it, and she was live on ESPN radio at 11 a.m.
Right.
And the fact that she knew about what had happened here just shows you, how much, man, it doesn't take much. Can you maybe talk to us about the food in the media room, whether it's on game day, big spread?
It was. You knew you were in Buffalo, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it was wings and pizza and, and chicken fingers
and constant complaining about the menu. The food wasn't warm enough. The food wasn't cold enough. I felt so bad for the sports service people.
The food was free.
The food, beggars can't be choosers, right?
Yeah.
The food was free, and I felt so bad for the hardworking folks, at sports service and Delaware North and all that. They're providing this food, and again, when you were the staff, coaches, the players. Basically, I ate there for free for 4 months straight, breakfast, lunch, dinner. But they gave the media, I think, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You got lunch?
Definitely Wednesday, maybe Thursday. I think Friday had a different.
Okay.
I think Friday was an early practice. It was definitely Wednesday, and I think Thursday, if I recall.
But boy, there was a lot of critics. And for a free meal,
yes,
while you're working,
right.
And I'm sure every NFL team does. And believe me, it was perfectly reasonable food. Like it was, but it was just that it was such an interesting dynamic to have these, non-affiliated people in your workspace every single day reporting. And you also had to be really careful about conversations that you'd have, even if they weren't involved, because, obviously eager ears. So conversation.
Exactly. I had to spend a lot of time in the training room because I paid the bills for the trainers, all the workers' comp. But so I would be down there a lot with Bud and Greg McMillan, all those guys. And, man, I would see players come off of the field with you don't know what it was, but they were hauled off. They were getting taped. They were getting iced. They were getting evaluated. I rarely knew the severity of the injury, but even just if I came up and told one of my coworkers, I was just in the training room, and Thurman Thomas just came off the field and he's being treated. If media heard me, if that was within earshot, if they just overheard it, I couldn't. I had to be on guard.
Yeah.
You go and somebody shut the door, and I would share it with a coworker, like, I want to kind of worry together with them, but I was real careful not to let the media hear anything like that.
It definitely added to the us against the world mentality, and it's like it was like invaders were in your space. That's what it always felt like to me.
Yeah.
We're gonna kind of wrap it up here, but something that we always do on our show every week is the Wheel of Failed Bills Coaches, which Don always sighs about, and then participates in. For anybody who is new to our show, we spin the wheel every week from the 15 years that you were the director of football administration, 2003 through 2017, where the Bills made the playoffs exactly 0 times.
Yeah.
So when we were going to do this feature, Don pushed back about the Wheel of Failed Bills Coaches. And they're not failed coaches. They're not failed humans.
All right.
They're failed coaches with the Bills, because
Can't argue that.
One could argue that over 15 years, if you never make the playoffs, it was kind of a failed coaching experiment. So anyways, today the wheel lands on someone that I don't know for the first time, and I'm curious. Chuck Dreisbach, linebacker coach, 2013.
Wow.
And if
you're not going to believe this,
okay,
somebody's going to actually think that I knew this before even.
No. Scout's honor. You had no idea who the coach is.
He was an elderly coach. He was up there in age, that was brought in because he had coached at a college with someone else that was on that staff. Darn it, I don't remember who that is. But we paid for the coaches to get apartments. We would give them cars. We had arranged for cars.
Okay.
Until they had their car shipped from wherever they was. I think he was from Houston.
Okay.
So
because a lot of these coaching deals happen really fast.
Oh, they do.
Right, like a week.
Oh yeah.
If that.
Oh my gosh, I remember when we hired. I remember I was in a mount. I went to ski every year in the Adirondacks at Oak Mountain or Gore Mountain, and I got a call like, "Oh, we're just bringing those coaches." I'm like, "I'm on a chairlift 4 hours away, but I'll come home tomorrow." And I had to cut those trips short to deal with it. But one night I got a call on a Friday night from him. He's like, "Don, I got in a car accident," and he went off the road right near Amelia Drive where that Target is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
It was snowing.
Okay.
It was January or February.
Okay.
And he said, "What do I do?" And I remember having to call. I called the director of security. He had police go over there. It wasn't his fault. He slipped off the road. But we had to have him towed. And then I had to it was maybe a Saturday. And I had to get him another car. I just told him to go to a rental agency. But I was just driving there the other day, thinking to myself, I think this is where Chuck Dreisbach slipped off the road.
Oh, how funny.
And you bring him up, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I guess I picture, I was not there when you became the director of football administration, but it almost feels like you were like not a babysitter for these coaches, but boy, you had to really hold their hand through the entire process of getting hired here, move your family here.
Yeah.
Like, and these guys, not all of them, a lot of them were not at all interested in the logistics of moving. All they wanted to do was coach football.
Exactly. So I ended up dealing with their wives a lot by phone and email, but sometimes they were particular about it. But they had their own mover. A lot of these guys had been with.
And a lot of these guys had probably moved 8, 9, 10 times.
Crazy.
So they had expectations, or they wanted it a certain way. Or
Mr. Wilson always made it clear to us, don't have no limits, don't not have limits, but take care of these guys. Make them feel welcome.
Yeah, because you don't want the reputation around the league of being cheap.
No, and I assure you, in that area, I had so many coaches say, like, "Holy cow, we've never been treated like this at any other team."
What was the most? How many head coaches were there when you 5?
No, way more than that. Let's see, Craig Williams, Dick Geron, Chan Gailey, Doug Marone,
and Rex Ryan. So
Rex
6.
was 6, but because it was after Wade. I didn't deal with the Wade you did. Ironically, you were on that staff. It was after that. So
Okay.
Greg Williams, They put me in that role.
So 6 head coaches.
Yeah.
Who had the biggest staff?
7 if you count Perry Fuel.
Oh.
3 games.
Okay. So who
we didn't have to do anything with
who had the biggest staff?
It just kept growing every year. I think that was the way of the league. I think
Probably Rex.
he had the
20
coaches. Yeah, I mean, it used to be like 13. It was one guy for every position group, and then all of a sudden,
when I was there with Wade, there was like 11.
Yeah, all of a sudden, instead of a defensive backs coach, you've got a CD coach and a safety coach, and then you got an inside linebackers coach and an outside linebackers coach, and then
what's the most ridiculous coaching title you remember?
Coaching title?
Was there like, I mean, I know there's like run game coordinator.
It was usually a position called assistant to the head coach. And the goal of having someone in that role is to serve as a liaison between the staff. And so we wouldn't have to go to the head coach for everything. I remember I was brought into one meeting with Mike Malarkey to talk to his staff, and he didn't have such a person. And he invited me, he said, I want you to, just explain to these guys all at one time, which I welcomed, instead of saying it 15 times, this is what you get, this is what we pay for. And I started the meeting, and he was like, hey, I'm going to head coach in this room. This is my meeting. Like, oh, okay. I thought you just wanted me to start. I didn't realize I had to be introduced. Oh, no dry ice or anything like that.
That's another like really interesting dynamic where these coaches are all mercenaries, and they all come in, and a lot of them haven't been with each other in a long time. So you have this dynamic in the building where the one half of guys like you, the marketing guys, they're long term, they've been there a long time, and then you have a group of 20 guys walking in the door for the first time, and to get to know them and interact with them, and knowing realistically, best case scenario, they've got 4 years.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting dynamics that we haven't brought up yet is when someone comes in as an assistant coach or a position coach that has previously been a head coach.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about it.
Dick LeBeau was one of them,
okay.
And Sam Weish was another. And I got to tell you, Josh, and
if Sam Weish, nice.
If Liz Maelstrom is ever listening to this, she was our HR person at the time. They both were 2 of the favorite coaches that ever came through. Like, you'd assume they had this ego.
Yeah. Exact opposite.
They put it totally aside, and they were just so. And I think Dick LeBeau came here, and he was again the head coach of the Steelers after that, or not the Steelers, defense coordinator with the Steelers, but he'd been head coach of the Bengals.
Yeah,
and Weish was too, but they were 2 of the nicest guys that ever came through.
Sam Weish has one of the greatest sound bites in NFL history when he yells at the crowd when they were throwing snowballs in Cincinnati. You're not in Cleveland. It's like the greatest sound bite ever. So Sam Weish came in as like D coordinator.
I think he was quarterbacks coach.
Wow. And I guess there's probably just some.
So wait. All right. The whole premise of the failed coaches. How do you categorize a Sam Weish?
Oh, he was a failed Bills coach.
Failed Bills coach. Or you might have to change the title to failed Bills.
It is. It's the wheel of failed Bills coaches. You're so busy poo-pooing the title that you haven't ever really listened to the entire title. It's the wheel of failed Bills coaches.
And part of me is little hand-wringing, maybe not literally about, am I going to know this guy? So far, I think I'm like
If you remember 6. Chuck Dreisbach or Dreisbach? Dreisbach?
Okay. I can't remember how to pronounce
it. Okay.
But I definitely
if you had a story about him, give we have about a couple minutes left here. Give me just a random fun coach story. Anybody from your 25 years there. Just give me a good.
Well, this one you mentioned an interesting position in the assistant head coach. We had one of those under head coach. I'm not going to say his name, but the years that I was helping take the pictures of the stadium of every play.
Okay, yeah.
All yesterday, it was, I don't know if you're hearing it for the first time. They have tablets now, but it used to be paper, and they asked me to do it for a couple of years. And got off to a very rough start.
Amicus, I don't think you want to be the assistant to the assistant. It's a. I was an assistant, and not glamorous.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, and this one person was the exact opposite of a head coach coming in. They thought they had more clout than they did. They didn't understand how they were viewed that way. But he was in the coach's booth, which was a pressure cooker. We were doing the pictures. We got them down in a way they were happy with him. But this one particular coach just could never stop finding fault with it. Well, they should be vertical instead of horizontal. They should be stapled in this corner, not that corner. And so Paul and I were kind of moving out of that phase. They had us do it one more year to teach this young kind of an intern guy how to do it.
Yep.
And so it was great because all we had to do was help him with the spot of the ball, and if there was a penalty, what the penalty was, so he could ultimately do it on its own. But we were right outside the door, and we kept telling him, hey, this one coach wants the paper stapled this way and that way. Oh, okay. And then we just thought we'd have some fun with it. And we were like, hey, this coach would like some water with lemon.
Nice.
Yeah. And he thought, well, this coach was like a foot rub. And then finally he realized we were just messing with him. But
did you do offense, defense, and special teams?
Oh, yeah.
Every picture, every play. 4
pictures of the offense, pre-snap, 2 during snap, post-snap. Same thing with the defense. And special teams was like just 2 pictures each, but you couldn't miss a play.
Yeah.
As you've said many times on this program, all you can do is mess up.
All you can do is mess up.
Yeah. So maybe another funny story is Dave Wanstead was having a rough year. I think it was 2012. Off to a good start, beat the Patriots, but the wheels just kind of fell off. We were in Houston, and they had a the all-out, all-Americana anthem where they had the big eagle flying from the top. He swooped down, and right at the end of the anthem, he landed on the guy's arm with the flag and everything. And Dave Wanstead goes, that man can get a bird to fly around the stadium and land on his arm at the end of the last note of a song, where he goes, I can't get my middle linebacker to find the B gap. We laughed so hard at him. It was we didn't know we were supposed to laugh. We just couldn't help it.
Was it funny or was it venting?
It was hilarious, but it was both. I don't think he was trying to be funny. I think he was genuinely frustrated.
That's
like, how does this guy have such control and I can't even get our linebacker to do this? Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think we're going to probably just wrap it up here and do something a little timely. We have an amazing interview tomorrow, premiering at noon Eastern with Don Beebe.
Noon, okay.
And then next Monday, because of the shortened schedule with the Bills game on Saturday, we're going to premiere our episode with Christine Lisi, who we had a lot of fun talking to about being on ESPN Radio. And it was kind of cool that she had just done a sports update 5 minutes before we started talking to her, and she went into another office, and we were able to tour the halls of ESPN as she walked.
Oh, I tried to video that. Yeah. I think I might have got it.
Yeah.
It was on a little screen, but there she is walking through the Bristol offices.
Yeah, you could hear the ESPN radios. They must pipe it in or something.
Yeah, that was cool.
So she was fantastic, and she's got a bunch of good stories about being at ESPN as a Bills fan. I don't think there's too many Bills fans there. And
except one other guy.
Yeah,
I his name down, but I didn't know who he was. But.
So we will. We'll see everybody. We'll be on the live chat tomorrow on YouTube at noon for the Don Beebe interview. It's a lot of good sound bites. He talks about Leon Letts, that play, obviously, kind of from a different perspective. His time with the Bills, winning the Super Bowl with the Packers, he gets a little choked up about that and how it related back to Buffalo. So we will see everybody here on YouTube tomorrow at noon.
Go Bills.